Hey, how's it going, guys? Mr. Boss for the win here, and in today's Red Dead Redemption 2 video, we are going to be talking about what really happened to Charles Smith at the end of the game and after the epilogue. So this is a character that you guys highly requested that I dive into and find out where he ultimately went, because we don't see him in Red Dead Redemption, and after the end of the epilogue in American Venom, we don't ever hear from him. So a lot of you guys wondered, where did Charles Smith go? What happened to him, and is there a possibility we see him again? So before we can talk about where we went, let's get some background on Charles Smith first, because that might help us out with our story. So Charles Smith was born to an African-American father and a Native American mother, and he became one of the most recent additions to the Vanderlyn gang, only joining about 6 or 7 months before the start in Chapter 1. So Charles has not been with the gang for very long. That's kind of important. Charles goes on to state throughout the game that he and his father lived with his mother's tribe until the U.S. Army drove them away. His mother was captured by soldiers a couple of years later and was never seen again, and his father fell into a depression and became an alcoholic. And at the age of 13, Charles ran away and wandered the country before joining other gangs and eventually the Vanderlyn gang in late 1898. And in case you guys want some background on what Charles's family is like, you can find this photo of his father, his mother, and him as like a very tiny baby. So you can see what sort of background Charles has. His father was African American, his mother was Native American, and he is sort of a mix in between. So that's the family life of Charles right there. And obviously he had a tough childhood, his mother being taken away by the army, and his father falling into depression and becoming an alcoholic. Now, if you guys are wondering if Charles Smith is still loyal to his tribe, well, in Chapter 1, when the gang is actually heading to Horseshoe Overlook and they're actually repairing one of the wagons, Charles points out that he doesn't know if he even has a tribe. Because he ran away at the young age of 13, he never really became associated with an Indian tribe. So that's why he sort of wandered around and went from gang to gang before eventually landing with Dutch, Arthur, and Hosea. However, and this next bit is important, that is why I think we see Charles so heavily involved with the Wapiti Indians, particularly Eagle Flies and Rains Falls. And you also might wonder where Charles went after Chapter 6 and towards the final mission of the game. Because as you guys know, Charles is not a part of the final mission, Red Dead Redemption. He's somewhere else. Well, you might be wondering where that is. Well, in one of the final missions of the game, My Last Boy, Charles effectively leaves the gang, opting to stay at the reservation to help the Wapiti Indians in getting away from the army. So that makes a lot of sense, that Charles would help the Wapiti Indians. He's associated with them. He feels their pain. And this would also explain why when he later returned to Roanoke Ridge, he found the bodies of Arthur and Susan Grimshaw, which is why he was responsible for burying them. So he literally came back to camp to find nothing there other than Arthur dead and Miss Grimshaw dead. Now, we don't know how long that was. One can only assume that it was likely a couple of days or maybe a week at most. And then we don't see Charles until Epilogue Part 2, where Uncle and John learn that after all of these years, he is alive and in Saint Denis. So he clearly didn't leave the area of Red Dead Redemption 2. He was in the South, and he essentially became like a boxer, which obviously is pretty cool. And as you guys know, Charles stays with John and Sadie at Beecher's Hope, and he eventually helps John build the ranch and then find Micah in the final mission of the game, American Venom. Now, in that mission, Charles actually reveals what he wants to do and how he wants to live the rest of his life after they find and kill Micah. Take a listen to this.
You interested in bounty hunting, Charles? My last assistant was put out to pasture.
No, that work ain't for me. I think I might get out of here. Go north. Canada. Find a woman. Start a family, if I can. I see how that life... Well, I'd like to try it.
Ooh, wait, John. You've given him the family bug.
I thought we would have inspired him to a life of celibacy and isolation.
Okay, so as you guys saw there, Charles reveals that he wants to settle down in Canada and start a family of his own. Now, you might be asking yourself, why would Charles Smith want to go to Canada? Well, the reason for that is actually where the Wapiti Indians are located. So if you actually run into Rain's Fall at the end of the game, he will tell you that the Wapiti Indians and their tribe have now moved to Canada.
Hello? Didn't I meet you a long time ago? I don't know. With, Arthur? Arthur Morgan? Oh, yes. My name is Rangefall. And I'm Jim Milton. John Marston. Oh. Is Arthur, He passed away. A long time ago. Oh, I'm sorry. He saved my life. He gave his. That doesn't surprise me one bit. And you? I know you had tough times. Well... My people aren't really a tribe. We're just a bunch of families, I suppose. But we're in Canada now. It's, What are you doing here? I don't really know. My son, I suppose. Oh, he fell. I know. I'm sorry. I've got a son. I'm very sorry. Oh, it was a long time ago now. Well, it's good to see you, Mr. Marston. And you.
So I guess that would make sense. Charles Smith built up a relationship with the Wapiti Indians. He helped them escape from the U.S. Army, and he knows that they're in Canada and that he knows he would have a home there and that there would be friendly people for him to ultimately live with. Now, as you guys know, in the final mission of the game, American Venom, Charles gets shot in the right shoulder, but he does eventually help Sadie and John take out Micah. And then in the cutscene credits of the game, we can actually see Charles attending John and Abigail's wedding, and eventually he will give his farewells to the Marston family, Uncle and Sadie, and he leaves the ranch. And even though his fate is uncertain, I think we can assume based off of what he said, he went to Canada and has probably started raising a family there on his own. And that would explain why we don't see him in Red Dead Redemption. And it also explains why we probably didn't hear from him afterwards in any newspaper articles or anything like that. If you're raising a family, you're likely going to be staying out of trouble and away from the law. Now, I have seen people report that Charles Smith has actually returned to Beecher's Hope after the final mission, American Venom. I can only assume this is a glitch because even the lines of dialogue that you can have with him when he does that all have to do with finding Micah, which already happened at this point. So I definitely think that it is a glitch, but either way, I do think that's kind of interesting that he does return to Beecher's Hope. So now the big question is, will we ever see Charles Smith going forward in the future? I think the answer is unlikely, especially because we don't hear from him in Red Dead Redemption and because of his story. So he's going to Canada, likely to live with the other Indians, and he wants to raise a family. That doesn't exactly sound as if that's the most exciting thing that Rockstar could do for a story expansion, if they were to do that. Sadie Adler's story sounds far more exciting. You know, running protection for a gold mine in South America. That sounds really interesting. You know, having Family Time Simulator with Charles Smith doesn't really sound all that exciting. However, maybe Charles would have trouble settling down and we could actually explore his new life in Canada. I can only imagine it would be incredibly snowy, and that was a really fun part of Red Dead Redemption 2 that I don't think Rockstar explored enough of outside of Chapter 1, the snow and the grizzlies and the Ambarino Mountains. So I do believe that would be really cool, but I think it's safe to say that Charles' story is likely over. I think Rockstar wanted to hint to us that he sort of gets the happily ever after ending where he survives, he goes to Canada, and likely finds a woman and starts a family. But anyways, that's what really happens to Charles Smith after you beat Red Dead Redemption 2. We don't ever hear from him again. You don't see him in newspapers. He never returns. He's likely in Canada and is likely just starting a family. But anyways, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments down below. Let me know what you think really happened to Charles Smith in the comments, or you can reach out to me on my Facebook page. I'd love to hear from you guys down there. If you did go on to enjoy this video, though, a like rating would, of course, be awesome. And subscribe to my YouTube channel if you are new, or you like daily Red Dead Redemption 2 videos like this. With all the way, guys, like I said, thanks so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next video.